Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. Excuse me, it is Friday the 13th of September 2019, which means it is Friday the 13th. And tonight's topic on this Friday evening is JPMorgan, top metals trading executive, is put on leave in criminal manipulation probe. Now, in the gold and silver communities, they love to talk about gold and silver manipulation, and if it wasn't for the gold and silver manipulation, they would all be rich, and silver would skyrocket and find its true value, and there'd be true price discovery. Gold would soar to the moon, but for this pesky manipulation, which the powers that be are denying even exists, but now we've got them. We've got them straight up. We've got them in these cases, and we're going to talk about this case tonight, where JPMorgan traders have been found manipulating the market. What we're going to show tonight is there's a difference between manipulation with a capital M and manipulation with a lowercase m. In all these instances where there's trading violations, they are manipulation with a lowercase m. They are manipulations where the traders are trading purely for financial gain. They have no ulterior motive. They're not working on behalf of any entity. They really could care less. They are lining their pockets. And that's the main takeaway here. And I'm going to show you that this happens in other markets. I've got examples of it happening in LIBOR, in copper, aluminum, zinc, soybeans. This is not specific to precious metals. When there is value, people will try to steal it. There's no doubt about that. If there's a bank robbery, well, that proves that at least some people think there's cash in the bank. It is not a conspiracy to somehow impact the price of gold, silver, copper, aluminum, zinc, other than for profit. When people talk about that there's this grand conspiracy to keep the metals prices low, well, the structure of the market keeps the prices low, and here's why. Before we get into this specific case, there was a communique back in 1974, and it is clear the government does have a concern about gold and silver prices, especially back in the 60s and 70s. Was clear. When you're on a gold standard, they had to keep the price of gold at $35 an ounce. So from 1934 to 1971, when we were on the gold standard of the Bretton Woods Agreement, and foreign central banks could bring their dollars to the United States and exchange them for gold at the rate of $35 an ounce, well, that took some overt manipulation to keep that price at $35 an ounce. Because you needed the price at $35 an ounce, obviously it had to be manipulated. The price is not going to be $35 an ounce in a market. So when they got rid of the gold standard in 1971, the hope was that people would view gold as a trinket. What do you want gold for? And that the price would drop. Having no monetary value whatsoever, gold would be for trinkets, would be for jewelry, and the price would not be supporting a international financial system. And a lot of observers, including in the CIA, because they used to actually monitor the gold price because it was an issue of national security, thought that the gold price might drop. Well, they were wrong. When they ended the Bretton Woods Agreement, and they took the world off the gold standard unilaterally, when Nixon just said, you can't bring your dollars here anymore, central banks are not going to give any gold, we're closing the gold window, they thought, well, that ends gold's run as a monetary metal. Wrong goes Star. The European banks, which are the main banks at the time, they still held on to their gold. They still wanted to return to a gold standard. Gold remained valuable. Then what happened? In 1933, Roosevelt said Americans can't hold gold anymore. In 1934, Congress set the price of gold at $35 an ounce. It stayed there until Nixon took the United States off the gold standard and took the world off the gold standard. And by the end of 1974, Gerald Ford signed an order saying that people could hold gold again. Now, they were concerned back then, because it was close to 1971, that people would view gold as a substitute to the dollar. And we did have inflation in the 70s, and that was a real concern. People were moving into gold. It still was very close to the 1971 breaching of the Bretton Woods Agreement. And there were people alive at the time fully aware that gold had been money, was part of the financial system, and they wanted their piece of it, and they were allowed to have it. Now, one of the things they did was they instituted, no surprise, to coincide with the availability of owning physical gold, was a futures market, which was designed to be a paper market where you could trade the price of gold, thus perhaps alleviating your need to want to hold the gold. You can get exposure to the price and all that pesky buying and holding and storing and insuring. You can just trade futures contracts if that's what you so desire to do. Now, that's a very important point, because the rationale behind a futures market really doesn't apply to the gold market unless you need to hedge gold because you have some requirement where you have to have a certain amount of gold at a certain point in time, and that might apply to a jeweler. But for the most part, gold is not a necessity. It's not like soybeans. It's not like the farmers have to hedge. It's not a futures market that really needs a futures market. You could have just an over-the-counters market where people could trade for the price of gold. But the futures market adds a level of volatility that probably they knew at the time would dissuade physical ownership. Because if everybody thought of gold as an alternative to the dollar or gold as an alternative to their own currency, well, then they would gobble it up and the price would rocket higher, and it would be higher against the fiat currencies. And if you are a fiat currency fan, especially after you've broken off the gold standard with no real intention to returning it, you don't need that. You do not want the gold price getting out of hand. So clearly there is an interest, and has been an interest by governments, of corralling in the price of gold, and to a lesser extent silver. However, if they want to do that, they can do that very easily. So let's just quickly go back in history. We're going to get to the JPMorgan case, I promise. We're not going to gloss over that. But I'm going to explain why the JPMorgan case is no different in any of these other cases, in copper, aluminum, zinc, soybeans, LIBOR, whatever it is merely a case of a type of manipulation called spoofing. And they don't really care whether the price is higher or lower, long-term or short-term. They're looking to make a quick buck. That's all that's going on in this JPMorgan thing. It hasn't exposed any conspiracy. It doesn't prove that manipulation goes on. Manipulation goes on in any market at any time, 24/7, if they can get away with it. The real manipulation that people are talking about is one where the government itself is actually in there creating issues. But one of the things we know about government is if they want to do this kind of stuff, if they really want to do it, they'll do it. I mean, they'll be in your face and they will tell you they're doing it. And I'll give you an example. If you go back to 1933, this is a pure, I mean, there's so many examples where you can, there's smoke, there's fire, and maybe there's manipulation, and look at this. There's so many examples of overt manipulation in the gold market, the silver market, and in all markets in general. Just take, for example, the Federal Reserve sets interest rates. That's manipulation straight up. They say, they don't let the market determine. They're going to, next week, they're going to say, we are cutting interest rates. That's price fixing. That's market manipulation. We saw a LIBOR. But let's go back to what Roosevelt did in 1933. He issues Executive Order 6102, requires U.S. citizens to turn in their gold coins, gold bullion, gold certificates to the government. At the time, gold circulating in the United States was considered money. Dollar's value was tied to gold at a rate of $20.67 an ounce. And Roosevelt's order said, okay, turn it in, we'll give you $20.67 an ounce. So far, no manipulation. They're just asking for the gold. Pure and simple. But then after issuing that order, Executive Order 6102, Roosevelt's government begins stockpiling gold from mining companies and buying some from foreigners. And then Roosevelt, in consultation with his own Secretary of Treasury, Henry Morgenthau, would set the gold price themselves, pushing it higher and higher. Now, there's a book, I think it's called New Deal or Raw Deal by Burton Folsom, where they sat around and they would discuss whether they were going to raise the price of gold 19 cents or 22 cents, and then Roosevelt would say, how about 21 cents? That's the right amount for gold to rise. And Morgenthau asked him why. He said, well, 21's a lucky number. These two guys in their pajamas are manipulating the price of gold. Now, we didn't know about this until later, but if you think that was chutzpah, so to speak, as they say in New York, now in January 1934, just a few short months after Roosevelt confiscates the gold, Congress passes a Gold Reserve Act, which, among other things, changes the price of gold from $20.67 an ounce to $35 an ounce, which gave the gold that they confiscated a 69% gain, or devalued the dollar 41%, which means if you turned in your gold, even though you got $20.67, it's now worth $35, you've lost 41%. Hold on a minute. The government itself, Congress itself, set the price of gold. Well, that's price manipulation straight up and in your face and in an open act of Congress. They didn't need to go behind the scenes. They decided they wanted a higher gold price because they wanted a lower dollar. It was the same nonsense back then. They wanted to create inflation because they had a depression on their hands, and they thought if they had inflation, a lower dollar, somehow that was going to generate economic growth. We all know how long the Great Depression lasted after 1934. That devaluation did not do the trick. But guess what? Because the price was set by Congress in 1934, that price stayed, even though the world grew. Everything happened in you had World War II. You had the post-World War II industrialized boom. You had the Europeans growing. And yet, under the Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944, through the 50s, through the 60s, the gold price somehow magically stayed at $35 an ounce, and they manipulated it to keep it there. Now, that is pure and straight up. We have a government policy, and we're going to enforce it. Congress passes a law. We want gold price to be $35. When they finally realized they couldn't keep the price of gold at $35, now, they could have allowed the gold price to rise and just let it go with the market, and that would have meant that the United States would have to, if they changed the valuation of how much gold they had to give, instead of at $35, they had to give it at, say, $50 or $60. Maybe the free market price at the time would have been $100. They would have lost less gold. They would have had to turn over less gold, because obviously if the price is higher, they have to hand over less gold. And the United States didn't want to do that. They thought that would devalue the dollar more, and they were going to inflation, so they didn't want to do that. So eventually Bretton Woods broke down, and they finally said, look, you just can't get any gold from us because we're not going to give it to you. Now, there's another example of price fixing right out in the open. Some of you may recall when, in 1965, the United States said, we're taking the silver out of the dimes, quarters, and half dollars. And from now on, they're going to be made out of copper and nickel, and that's the way it's going to be. And if you don't like it, well, that's too bad. But there was another thing that happened. Johnson knew that some people would think, wait a minute, I got these copper, nickel, quarters, dimes, and half dollars, and I got these silver dimes, quarters, and half dollars, which we're going to talk about tomorrow night on Saturday Night Silver with Smaulgld, junk silver, that maybe I'm going to hold on to these junk silver coins because they got silver in them, and I know silver is worth more than copper and nickel. Johnson explicitly warned, do not hoard your silver coins. And he coupled that with a threat. And he said, with the assistance of the Treasury, we will flood the market with silver to ensure the price will not rise. So basically, if they want to manipulate, they're going to come right out and tell you, don't do it. Now, he made these comments when he was signing the coinage act that took the silver from the coins. And he said, if anybody has any idea of hoarding our silver coins, let me say this. This is at the time when Treasury was holding a lot of silver. They were backing silver certificates. They had a silver strategic stockpile. He said, Treasury has a lot of silver on its hand, and it can and will be used to keep the price of silver in line with its value in our present silver coin. There will be no profit in holding them out of circulation for the value of their silver content. Again, if the government wants to manipulate, they do it all the time. When Trump wants to manipulate the market, he comes out and he says, China, we got a good deal going on with China. And then the stock market goes higher. So the government can and does manipulate markets. That's not any type of secret. Nixon did the same thing. If you think about what he did, was he just unilaterally removed the United States from the gold standard. Boom, just closed the gold window, says you can't have gold anymore. And also said he changed the whole idea of what the value of the dollar is. He said that the value of the dollar is not based on the fact that it has gold backing. Like hell it wasn't. That's what everybody agreed to. That's what everybody thought it was. He said, no, the value of the dollar is based on the strength of, or value of currency is based on the strength of its economy. Since when? Since he said it. And that, therefore, he was saying the United States has the strongest economy, and therefore, the dollar remains as strong as it ever has been. Now, that's fake. That's false. But a good portion of the world believed that. I mean, the dollar did take a hit after they took it off the gold standard. But it didn't collapse. And in fact, the dollar has not collapsed since 1971. You can say it lost value and so on. The point is that governments can and do manipulate and do so successfully all the time. And we've seen the central banks. We saw the London gold pool. There's classic examples of where governments and central banks will manipulate the gold market. The countries amongst themselves, they had those agreements, the gold agreements amongst countries, where they agreed not to sell a certain amount of gold. So it's not like governments will lie they do lie, but it's not like they hide the fact when they want to manipulate a market, they will. What do you think QE was? What do you think what Draghi was doing yesterday was? We will use our tools. We will lower the interest rate, but we need fiscal policy. We need people to hand out the money. They'll make up whatever they can to manipulate markets. There's no secret. But what happens is, if you're hyper-focused on gold and silver, you think, because you listen to these YouTube channels that all they do is pump gold and silver and make it seem like the world is out to get gold and silver. No. Now we're going to move over to what actually happened and is happening in all of these cases. It's a pure case of greed, criminality, and people trying to game the system. And anything about people always rent-seeking, point-shaving, happens everywhere. This is not unique to gold and silver. What people are trying to say is that JPMorgan or any of these entities are acting on behalf of the government to suppress the price of silver. There's no evidence of that. There's evidence that these people are criminals. That doesn't mean that they're working with the government. They're trying to enrich themselves. But let's get into the specifics of that case. And then we're going to get into how this happens in every market. I've got an example for you in the copper market where the outright manipulation in the copper market. Outright manipulation, Goldman Sachs in the aluminum market. Outright manipulation by Glencore in the zinc market. Outright manipulation in all of these LIBOR. Manipulation goes on all the time. And there is a conspiracy, but it's a conspiracy either to drive the price up, drive the price down, so that they can profit from the misallocation of where the market actually is going to go. So what happened in this JPMorgan case? So a couple of guys already have been, I think they pled guilty, this most recent case, to spoofing. Now what is spoofing? Spoofing is the oldest trick in the book. It's the old, I ain't got it. You put out a bid there, like you're gonna buy a bunch of gold, or you're gonna buy a bunch of silver, or you're gonna sell a bunch of gold or sell a bunch of silver. The book, everyone sees the book. They say, "Oh, there's a big player, a big whale. He's gonna he's got a bid in for silver at $17.25. Hey, he's going long. He's going to buy 500 contracts. So everybody else starts setting their bids in, and I'll put mine in around the same time, and I'll ride these coattails of this whale. And then the whale goes, oh, just kidding. He pulls his bid. The price plummets, and he's already got a short position ready, pockets on that position, and he's made his money. Now, the problem with saying that this is some kind of conspiracy to keep the price down is they spoofed up and down. They don't care. They'll go long, they'll go short. So that's basically what happened in this case. Now, the two guys that pled guilty said, hey, we didn't do this on our own. We learned it from our boss. We learned it from, they told us how to do this, and we were doing it for years. They were doing it from 2008 to 2014. I'm sure people are still doing it. It's somehow hard to detect. I mean, sometimes you make a mistake. I ain't got it. And then the ball falls. I mean, you think you want to make a trade, you're ready to make a trade, and then you say, forget it, I'm going to make a trade. You have to establish some type of pattern. You have to establish intent that you're trying to manipulate the market. Now, what's happened in this case is they've put these two guys on leave. It's a criminal probe. Doesn't mean that they did anything. They're probably involved, but for now, they've got them off. But this, again, does not mean that JPMorgan is working for the government to keep the price of gold or silver down. Then there's examples. You say, well, okay, well, that's spoofing. I get it. They're just trying to make some money, and there's criminals in every bank, and it doesn't mean they work for the government. But what about when we've had cases where they'll just drop a few hundred contracts, tons of silver, tons of gold, for no reason whatsoever, middle of the night or end of the trading day or whatever, and boom, down goes the price. That clearly looks like that they're trying to knock the silver price down, they're trying to knock the gold price down. What do you have to say for that? Well, there have been cases, and there was another, I think it was a JPMorgan, no, it was a Deutsche Bank case, where they had the text messages, and they would say, okay, anybody ready? We're going to go smash silver. And then it'd be 3, 2, 1, boom. And then they would smash silver. They'd all have a big laugh. They make their money, and that would be the end of it. Now, you'd say, well, why would they do that? Isn't that manipulation? Well, here's the problem. There's a thing called the business judgment rule. If you do something stupid in business, but absent any other documentary evidence that you had intent to commit fraud or you had intent to conspire, courts are not going to second guess your business judgment. Otherwise, they would be second guessing stupid ideas all the time. The court's not. They don't know how to run a business. Many people in business don't know how to run a business, but that doesn't mean the court is going to substitute its judgment. So there is a thing called the business judgment rule. Every time someone makes a bad trade, there may be a reason for that trade. Who knows? Now, it does seem to me, and I'm not a skilled trader, but if someone dumps a bunch of contracts for no reason, appearing to have no reason, and they would lose money on it, you'd say, that looks like manipulation. But even there, unless you have proof that the reason they did it is part of some grand scheme to keep the price down, those cases go nowhere, because the court looks at it and goes, okay, so the guy lost money on his trade. What do you want from me? Is it illegal to lose money? No. Is it illegal to be a stupid trader? No. So what are they going to do? Now, you say, well, wait a minute. I'm not stupid. Just because the courts can't find any, there's a difference between a legal standard and the what's the word? It doesn't pass the smell test standard. I mean, it looks stupid. Well, here's the problem with that. If you are trading on a basis that there is a non-economic trade, it's hard to say that the trader is doing something intentional, because they can always say, well, he's an idiot and he's not going to do it again. But they say, well, this happens all the time. how can you explain it? Well, you don't have to explain it. So that's where it gets dicey, is because you say to yourself, okay, I know we can't get him, but we know he did it. It's like OJ. You say, well, we know he did it, but you can't prove it. But here's the problem with that. If you know that somebody is doing something, and he's doing it to keep the price of the metal low, well, then shouldn't that be a invitation to the long traders, to the people who want to buy the metals at the lower price, an invitation to basically erase that mistake or that stupidity, or call it what you want, that attempt to manipulate the price lower. The point is that if you really think that, let's say you could prove a conspiracy to keep the price lower, well, if they're able to do it, that would mean they can only do it temporarily, because if people actually believe the price of the commodity that's sent down so low shouldn't be low, they'd immediately bid it back up. They'd immediately buy it back up, both in the paper markets and the physical markets. The thing is, they don't. And that's the problem with gold and silver, I believe, is that people, if you buy gold for its monetary, obviously you want it to go up. You're holding it for it to go up. Well, if it's on its way down, it's almost like they can discourage you from buying it. That's exactly what the futures market does. No matter what the trading is, no matter what happens, the idea that it trades like that discourages you from going out and buying. It discourages you from trading it, because the large traders do and can manipulate markets by the mere fact, like for example, when they raise margin interest. The larger players can protect their positions by putting up the margin. Smaller players may not even be trading on margin. They may realize, oh, for me to hold on to this position, I'm going to have to buy. I can't roll this contract over. I'm just not going to do it. So there's manipulation always, and the larger players are always going to be somewhat in control of the market. See, there's a Chicago School of Economics theory, which I don't agree with. It says that in an efficient market, there's perfect information, and an argument that larger players control markets is not a winning argument. And the rationale there is, like with monopolies, they say, look, if it's just a matter of enough money, well, they can go out and raise financing, because if all they have to do to get just as big, if they see that there's a monopoly making monopoly profits, then why wouldn't somebody invest money in another company? They can do exactly the same thing and grab some of that profit. They assume that financing is easy to come by. They assume that I can start, and you and I, we all can start another JPMorgan tomorrow. And we can go in there and have all massive amount of money and expertise to set up a trading entity and to go long gold and silver. That's basically how the Chicago School of Economics looks at it. It says, yeah, even if you have a market that is being dominated by a large player, if they're only being dominated by the fact that they're able to have more money to support their positions, well, then someone else can come in there, and all it takes is money. Well, not quite that simple, because there's regulations. We know how they favor current traders, so it's not as easy as that. So, by definition, without any conspiracy, this is the important point. The futures market is going to, especially in a market where you don't actually have to have the gold. If they had to have the gold, people would buy it. They don't. We see that. We had the other night, we were talking, why aren't people buying Silver Eagles? The physical sales of the stuff are down. If people prefer fiat profits, and that's a fact. People don't understand that. They collect gold and silver. They think that it's toilet paper. Well, most people want the toilet paper. All businesses run on the toilet paper. They all run on dollars. They put their accounts in dollars. People get their bonuses in dollars. So when you say things like that, it's almost ignorant to say, oh, why don't they want the real money? Why don't they want the real stuff? Well, their house in the Hamptons and their Ferraris and all that stuff that they have wasn't bought with having real money. They don't stack monster boxes. They don't collect gold coins. They trade fiat money. So the idea that the people that are in these markets are going to be motivated by physical gold and silver. Like someone's going to stand for delivery and then it's going to be game over. When you say that, that's ignorant. Because those people aren't there to get a stack of gold. They're not Gollum. They're not Smaug. They're not. A lot of them have never even seen the gold that they trade. So, by definition, these markets are going to be manipulated, both just in general, just because if the larger players are going to have an advantage in trading, there's nothing you can do about that. That's true in the world. You think it's one man, one vote in a democracy? No, it's not. People with the money can influence voters. They can buy off politicians. It's no different in the market. But the thing is, it's nothing specific to gold and silver. So what you have, for example, I mean, when you listen to the silver and gold channels, they only tell you about silver and gold as if the world only thinks about silver and gold, that the traders there, they really are there for the gold and silver. They're not. They're there to steal. They're there to make money honestly. They really could care less about the gold or silver. But here's an example. Copper, 1995, Commodities Futures Trading Commission. Big case here. Sumitomo and respondents, and they had a bunch of their cohorts. They set about to acquire and maintain a dominant controlling position in the London Metal Exchange warehouse stocks of copper. Sound familiar? Now, what's in the London Metal Warehouse in terms of copper, just like what's in the JPMorgan vault silver for COMEX or HSBC's gold and COMEX, that's not all the gold in the world. It's not even close. That's not all the silver in the world that JPMorgan's vault has in COMEX. And this copper that's hanging out in the London Metals Exchange was not all the copper in the world, but that is the copper from which forms the basis that they trade around. So, in this particular case, this sounds just like what they do. Again, this is copper. They had a dominant controlling position in the London Metals Exchange warehouse stocks of copper, and thereafter keeping off the market a large percentage of this copper and making available the remainder at artificially high prices. That's a manipulation scheme. You artificially control the supply of copper, which they're not controlling the copper supply in general, but they're controlling the copper supply that determines what copper is available to trade on the London Metal Exchange. These actions created an artificial shortage of the copper, which was available for delivery against copper futures contracts, which thereby caused the price of copper, copper's future prices, and copper spread differentials to reach artificially high levels. Why are they doing this? They're trying to make money. They're not trying to they're not working for the government because they could. Now the government could want copper or gold to go up or down. They could want gold or silver to go up or down. But generally, these are banks. They have their own criminal intent because generally if the government wants to do it, the president can just write an executive order and say the copper price is going up or everybody's got to turn in their copper. This is Sumitomo that was doing this. Then it says, CFTC, they purchased and held massive and unneeded long copper futures contract positions, which were intended to and did inject significant artificial demand and buying pressure into the pricing mechanism for copper futures contracts. They engaged in an elaborate scheme of deception and false statements, which is intended to and did have the effect of misleading other market participants in furtherance of their manipulative scheme. As a result of their conduct during this period of manipulation, the prices of copper futures contracts, copper spread price differentials, and the prices of cash and physical copper, both in the United States and abroad, reached artificially high levels. So banks are always looking, and Merrill Lynch aided and abetted the conspirators. That's why these banks pay hundreds of millions of dollars of fines. We saw the other night that the banks, JPMorgan, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, they pay fines in excess of the value of the overall silver market. They're doing it in every market. It's not just gold and silver. So that's copper. Here's another one. This is, who's doing this? Goldman Sachs. Who knew? They have a network of 27 Detroit warehouses on which they keep aluminum, 1.5 million tons, quarter of the nation's supply. And hardly anyone would have thought that the manufacturer seeking to purchase that aluminum might have to wait 18 months or more for delivery. Now, this was all about Goldman Sachs trying to manipulate the price of aluminum by creating supply bottlenecks and bank-owned warehouses and so on. And then, of course, they financialize these markets. They sell. It's not particular to gold and silver. The problem that the gold and silver people think is that somehow this is just gold and silver because the world knows how important gold and silver is. No, they'll do this with anything. They will do this with copper. They'll do it with aluminum, herein zinc. Glencore and Percuni Metals indicated they were attempting to monopolize the market to drive up the zinc price. Watch Trading Places. It happens on small levels. It happens on big levels. It probably happens every single day. Goldman Sachs, JPMorgan. Now, they won that case. They won the lawsuit over zinc prices. Now, in many cases, all this manipulation that happens, they win the cases. They get the cases dismissed. They point out something. Nothing is going to change. So when you hear them say, well, now we know, we have proof that they manipulate the silver market and the gold market, this guy or that guy, he's vindicated. No, there's no vindication. No one was saying that that there's no market manipulation. What they're saying is there's no proof that the government instructs the banks to manipulate these markets. The markets, by definition, manipulate themselves. Just the structure of the market. Now, the thing is, if they were to manipulate the market to the point where it made sense for somebody to realize that what the price is undervalued, well, then the paper market would catch up, as would the physical market. The problem that people don't understand about silver is the people that think silver is undervalued are silver stackers. Clearly, that's why they're silver stackers. But the problem is most people and most money are not silver stackers. This is my whole point about gold and silver is that, especially silver, look what happened today. I said all year I've been saying, even last year, for silver to go higher and to stay higher, gold has to be above $1,500. Gold doesn't get above $1,500 and stay above $1,500, then silver's not going to happen. Gold gets to $1,500, stays at 15, makes a strong move towards 16, and then silver rises. What happened today? Gold falls below 1,500. It's down 0.73%. Silver gets smashed. 1742. What do you say? Buy, buy, buy. I'm a silver stacker. This is a gift. It's been a gift for 10 years now. The world doesn't think that way. There's no demand for silver, despite the exhortations that they're finding new uses for it every day in yoga pants, whatever the story is. What's happening is that the price goes lower, and momentum players say, I don't want to touch that. It's going lower. And who else wants it? Who's thinking, well, that's a bargain? Generally no one. Because if it was a bargain, people would buy it. That's Chicago School of Economics. That generally there's perfect pricing. If people know what's going on, a pricing imbalance is not going to last. It's the old joke about the Chicago School of Economics. Professors are walking along, and they're walking along with one of the students, and the three professors are with the student, and they walk on a sidewalk together, and there's $100 bill clearly in the middle of the sidewalk, and the student's off to the side, and he sees two of the professors look down and walk right through the $100 bill, and they get a few steps away, and then the student says to the professors, $100, you guys have walked right over it. Why'd you do that? And they said there wasn't $100 there. He says, yeah, I saw it. He goes, no, if there was $100 there, somebody would have picked it up already. So they actually believe that nonsense, but there you go. The point is, though, I do believe that to a certain extent, that if the price was low, and there's stackers who do this, they buy the dips. That's the idea of buying the dips. But remember, buying the dip has the impact of pushing the price higher if enough people are buying the dips. The problem is, if only silver stackers are buying silver rounds because they're not buying silver eagles, then it's going to have no impact whatsoever, and you're just buying into a losing position. Most silver and gold people do not have a trading mentality. It's neither a good nor a bad thing, but what they try to do is, not understanding the trading mentality, is they try to apply a stacker mentality to what the traders are doing. That's a big mistake. They don't have the idea that the dollar is going to collapse, and the dollar is toilet paper, and China is going to crush the dollar, and JPMorgan's buying silver eagles. Traders don't even know about that stuff. They don't even think that way. They don't care about that. They're trying to make as many dollars as they can. And you can call them idiots. You can say they're not woke. They're sheeple. It's not going to help your case. It just makes you feel better that you can call people names while you're holding on to a stack of silver that's not going any higher. So in any event, the point is that we have a situation where soybeans, all of these commodities are manipulated. They can be manipulated via spoofing. You can make uneconomic bids. You can do one-offs. There's so many ways to manipulate markets, and there's so many markets that can be manipulated. It's not specific to gold or silver. There isn't an aha moment. Now we got them. No. Now JPMorgan will pay a fine. 2 traders will go to jail. Someone else might go to jail. Maybe they don't go to jail. Maybe the other 2 guys beat the rap. And they'll go on spoofing. Maybe not in the silver market and the gold market because they know people are watching it. They'll move over to soybeans or copper or aluminum or zinc or some market where no one's paying attention, and they'll start spoofing over there, or they'll be doing short selling. Now, this point of view will make you jaundice. This will make you feel like there's no hope, that everything is manipulated. Kind of true. I mean, everything is manipulated to a certain extent, but there's also periods of time where the manipulation works the other way. And even so, even with manipulation, eventually things do find the right price. If people actually wanted silver in large quantities and they thought the price was too low, someone or something would buy it. Now, someone raised a very interesting point the other day to me. He said, well, how come no one does this? And it's a very good question. There's 2 explanations. No one thinks it's worth the time, but there is the possibility that there's some type of gentleman's agreement that we're going to leave this alone. Because one thing that is true about some of these commodity markets, I would say it's particularly true about platinum or palladium, not so much silver, but silver too. Wouldn't take much. Like someone who had a lot of money to go in and buy up a lot of physical of a particular metal, palladium, platinum, and a lot of the contracts, and basically bust the COMEX or cause the price to go bonkers to secure 60% of the world's available supply. I mean, you can do that in silver and platinum and palladium. It's not that expensive. But then what will happen is they'll come after you. And the Hunts brothers are a classic example. They didn't do anything wrong. What they did was they realized they were going to be successful in accumulating a lot of the silver through contracts, and they knew the only way to stop them is to shut the COMEX down and to raise margin requirements, and that got rid of them, and then to bring a lawsuit against them, like they had been criminals. So cornering markets, that's considered like a criminal event too. So that's the reason it doesn't happen. Either they don't think it's worth trying because they don't see the economic value, or they don't think it's worth trying because they can get in trouble. And if you're trying to make money and not trying to prove a point, it's a very expensive point to prove if you end up getting arrested and not getting the profit. I mean, you can try. I think Eric Sprott once said something. I'm not trying. Someone said, "Why don't you try to buy a lot of silver?" He said, "I don't remember who asked him. It was way back, it was a few years ago," and he said something like, I'm not going to be the guinea pig in that one. So a lot of people think they talk a big game because they're holding on to a monster box. But the people that have real money, they're not looking to lose their careers, lose all their money, trying to play games with markets and, in a sense, manipulate markets to the upside. So anyway, that's what's going on with this JPMorgan case. I don't expect much to happen. I'll leave links below. I did explain the Deutsche Bank silver manipulation case. JPMorgan cleared in silver manipulation. Deutsche Bank settles silver gold manipulation. There's been many cases over the years. It's not like it's hidden that they don't admit that there's manipulation. There is manipulation. The question is whether it's with a big M or a small m. And so far, and I'm not saying that it's not possible that the government isn't trying to manipulate the price of gold and silver down. I think it just happens the natural way the market is set up. Because if they really wanted to knock the price of gold or silver down, well, think about it. They could. The government is so they can just come out and do things. The Fed could be part of its policy and just say, we're going to crush the gold price. We don't like the gold price going higher, and that would be the end of it. They could do it. sell everything short. There's so many ways that if you think about what Mario Draghi said yesterday, we will do what we need to do in our toolbox. I mean, they all have toolboxes where they have access to, much more even so than JPMorgan, access to unlimited amounts of capital. They can buy any asset they want on the planet. They can print up the money to do so. They can move interest rates up and down. The idea that somehow these two traders are going to hold the key, these two spoofing traders, to some grand conspiracy is ridiculous. All right, let's see what you guys are saying about manipulation or whatever else you might be saying. All right, let's see what we got. Where's Barry? He says, manipulation again? I don't think we talk about manipulation very often because I think it's kind of a bogus topic, but it does get people riled up. It's the type of thing gets their emotions going. You keep them focused just on the manipulation and how you're being screwed out of your gold and silver profits. But if they're selling metals, I'll tell you it's a buying opportunity because we know this artificial manipulation can't last. Then they repeat the story. Then you repeat the story, or people believe the story. And then you call people like me shills or disinformation agents or dollar lovers or some other nonsense. And they don't even realize why they hold these positions. The reason positions, these points of view, they hold them because they binge watched all these gold and silver pumper channels, convincing them that JPMorgan bought a few hundred million Silver Eagles and Canadian Maple Leafs, which is no evidence of that whatsoever, other than wanting to believe it. And the same thing with all this manipulation, and once they let the silver go free, and it's all hopium and newsletter writing and selling gold and silver. And you can believe that stuff if you want. But, well, if I'm going to have to, like someone said, if I'm going to have to believe you, or the name like whoever these people are, I don't know why you would want to believe them. They're considered, why are they considered experts? Did they spend years like I did drafting derivatives in international markets? Were they even involved? Did they even work on Wall Street or the City of London like I did? No. I mean, it's amazing. Well, they have more subscribers on YouTube. And this guy wears a cowboy hat. And this guy, I mean, they're experts now. I don't understand why. They make predictions that don't make a stitch of sense. They tell you stuff, and anyway. But you can always believe who you want to believe. All right, let's get into the comments again. Roger, nothing will happen to any bank executives. The bankers always win, just like back in that. Yeah, what happens is those two guys, the spoofers, they're in trouble. Maybe the top metals executive, he'll get in trouble. But put it this way. Jamie Dimon's not going down over this. That's not going to happen. Why have laws if you don't enforce them on everyone? Well, they do enforce them. From time to time, they fine people. That the government figures it's better off to fine them. It's cheaper because you don't have to. When you fine somebody and they either admit guilt or don't admit guilt, case is over, and the government gets the cash. And when they get the cash, that means they can hire more people at their bureaucracy. Yep, laws make politicians look important. Says it. Okay, Roger Henley, finance people invented so many tools to make a quick buck. Lots of while other activities become unprofitable very quickly, it became very hard to run a small business. Well, that's my point. The small guy, the small gal is at a disadvantage, whether you have a corrupt system or a non-corrupt system. There is a thing called economies of scale in a free market. It's not just a corrupt market. Now, the problem is in a free market becomes a corrupt market because once you have economies of scale and you're a large company, you can now afford to pay protection, which means you can go to the government. Like Warren Buffett was clearly, when he was a younger guy, he was a great investor. He's not a great investor now. He buys stuff that he knows he can use his influence to, if the company has a problem, the government's going to bail them out. And he knows by his mere size, if he buys a particular stake in a particular company, it's going to go higher. It's self-fulfilling. So larger players will have an advantage, and they will naturally gravitate towards eventually no competition. They may gain their monopoly through competition, but once they have their monopoly, look at Apple. Apple doesn't do anything. They just keep putting out iPhones. They don't innovate. When Apple was a shitty company, when Apple had lost its edge and really could not get the Mac off the ground, that's when they had to come up with the i. It was really what started the Apple dominance, was when they issued a series of products for about 5 to 7 years. They came out with the iPod. What was it? The little MP3 player. Then they converted that into a phone. Then they came out with the iPads, and yeah, they moved themselves. Now they're a big player, and what do? They just upgrade the iPhone every now and then they censor people, and it's larger companies have the advantage. It's always the way. All right. Roger. Smaulgld, do you know there was any sort of black market for gold after the executive order to confiscate? I don't know. I know that no one really got arrested for that. And you got to remember back then, there wasn't, from what I understand, what I've read about the Depression, gold was not on everyone's mind. Getting enough to eat was on their mind. I'm sure the wealthy just ignored the laws like they ever did, and if they had gold, they just kept it. The average person wasn't stacking gold, because back then gold was in the coinage. And generally, from what I understand, that the gold coins didn't circulate that much. If you got a small gold coin, you might have given it as a gift, so people might have hoarded it. But I don't think it was trading going on back and forth like there was. You know what the big market was in the 30s? It wasn't gold, black market. It was whiskey. This is bootleg. No, I'm sorry. They got rid of it. I'm sorry. That was in the 20s. They got rid of prohibition in the 30s. In fact, in the 30s, the problem with anything was there really weren't markets. They had destroyed the markets because there wasn't much of an economy going on. And one of the things that Roosevelt had done was he was having crops destroyed. He was trying to get the prices. He was trying to raise prices by reducing supply of farm goods, cattle, pigs, and so on. And so there wasn't a robust economy. So obviously, black market, there wasn't a... Generally, there's a black market if there's a need. I don't think there was a need for gold. I haven't researched it, but I don't think there was any robust market where people were thinking, screw the government, they took our gold. They took our gold, and they were out trading it behind everyone's back. All right, acceleration rule. Looks like he made a little profit at $18 in silver that he bought at $14. Well, that's true. You trade ETFs, you don't have to. But I think that's what's happening too. You don't pay premiums on the. You don't pay premium when you buy it. You don't pay a commission when you sell it the same way. Joshua Roberts, buy aluminum, crash JPMorgan. Let's take down the manipulators. Yeah. Go to my invest in aluminum-backed cryptocurrency Muppet coin. Yeah. For some reason, Joshua, that comment. Well, I gotta tell you, I saw the other day. It's very interesting. I don't poke around the back end of the YouTube, but I was looking at. There's a little thing called community, managed community, and I was trying to figure. Well, actually, I wasn't there for any reason. I wasn't trying to figure anything out, but I did when I was there. I figured out, like for example, Joshua's comment was just hid. And I don't know why it was hid. His comment said, go to my website and invest in aluminum-backed cryptocurrency Muppet coin. Now, the word Muppet must be something that you're not allowed to say. I don't know. Maybe they got a deal with Goldman Sachs. They don't want that reference. I have no idea. But they had a section, and it said, in your live chat, block the following phrases. And you could add in, like, I don't know, if you can add in whatever you want. Like if you don't want someone in the comments saying Smaulgld sucks or something, you can write in Smaulgld sucks and that comment won't show. And written in the comments, I mean in the section where it says don't allow these words to be in your comments. I mean, sure you could put the George Carlin words in there, the dirty words you're not allowed to say on television. It looked like it was pre-populated. One of the words was strategic, and I was thinking, well, okay, why would anyone want to not allow the word strategic in your chat? And then the next two are Carlos Danger and John Podesta. And I was thinking, why would somebody want to block those? Well, obviously, because generally, if somebody is talking about those two gentlemen, they're going to say something really nasty thereafter. So if you have those words blocked, then you're not going to see those comments. But the thing is, I would never block those words because we don't talk about that kind of stuff on this channel. But I guess they're worried that somebody would come on to the channel and maybe someone might have done it in the past. I don't know, because I had them I had them blocked. I didn't block. I didn't write those words in there. I wouldn't even think to use my 3 phrases to block on the Smaulgld. If I were to, I don't have any words in there right now. Would not be strategic, Carlos Danger, and John Podesta. So just wonder where this stuff comes from. So that was an aside. Joshua was saying, just joking. Mugs are only real source of wealth left. That's true. Smaulgld Mugs. He's right. He's saying I'm 100% serious about that. Mugs, the truth, is the only commodity still worth anything in the final analysis. And a rare commodity indeed in the alt finance world. Roger says yoga pants are real wealth because they have 0.01 ounces of silver. Busy Mountain is here. And whereas Barry says the real wealth is in yoga pants. Exactly. Joshua says, I think the main reason no one in a position to do this in any market is because they know their position would be targeted and they would end up being ruined. And then he says, bam, red is mine. Yeah, because I did make that point. I guess what Joshua was typing. As long as you didn't type Carlos Danger and John Podesta. Now, me saying this means that this video will probably not be put in the recommended videos because there's probably not a live person listening to this. What happens is every video that gets put in, they run it through the algorithm and they get a transcript. And then the algorithm runs through the transcript and looks for all the naughty words. And then they decide, this video, he's talking about Carlos and Podesta. So we got to get rid of him because they're obviously not talking about anything we want them to be talking about. When indeed, we're not talking about that at all. But, okay, another comment by Joshua has been held up. But this is because he used the word RAPED. So I guess that makes sense. But I don't have that word blocked. But there you go. But I still don't understand why Muppets got blocked. All right. DW is here. Do we got anything else? Joshua, you got another one. They're going to rig the beep out of the 2020 election, you said, and that's not being shown either. All right, Countercrow. Interesting anecdote. Local coin shop just had a local seller of 100 ounce of rhodium. Seller disclosed he moved the gain into real estate in Hawaii. Yeah, rhodium is up huge. I mean, who thinks about rhodium? But rhodium's not money. Who cares? You know what rhodium was at the beginning of the year? $2,200. It is at $4,700 right now. But it's not money. Oh, see, I don't have the words, Joshua, blocked, so you got to write them in there. Did my D state comment get blocked 10 minutes above Ken S? Let me take a look. Let's see. Oh, here you go. No, I see it here. I missed it. Bankers and deep state live on a sea of attorneys. There's always a catch. They wouldn't do it if they could get away with it when it comes time for court. There's nothing really fishy about that comment, Ken. I missed it. I didn't even see it. Sometimes when you scroll by the comments, they group them such that I missed them. All right. But your comment did get through. And that's it. All right. I want to thank everyone for joining me tonight. If you enjoyed this podcast, I do want to invite you to become... I'm trolling hard lately for subscribers on Patreon. I'm up to, I think I got $100 a month now. 24 patrons. I want to thank my latest patron. I don't use anyone's name unless they ask me to use their name, and no one's asked, so I respect your privacy. And but I do appreciate it, and I will call out the people that do send me items. I just won't say who they are. You can support Smaulgld on Patreon or Subscribestar or PayPal, or you can send Bitcoin or Litecoin. I actually enjoy those donations on Bitcoin and Litecoin. Probably the most. I like this certainty. I love all of them. But conceptually, I don't like having to pay the fee that Patreon takes. But I love the idea that it comes in every month, because that means that I have some certainty of knowing that the work is being valued regularly. Same with Subscribestar, but they take a cut. Same with PayPal. But when you send checks or cash or items of value like silver through the mail, then I get 100% of it. And the same with Bitcoin and Litecoin. If you hold up your phone, your QR code, you donate that way. But I appreciate all donations. And also, if you're buying gold or silver, it's not investment advice to do so. But you really help the site out when you buy to those affiliate links, JSD Bullion, Money Metals Exchange, and Golden Eagle Coin. because I get a small commission, and you're not paying any less. If you just remember, you're going to buy anyway. If you buy through those links, that does help out. You don't even have to donate at that point, because you are helping the site out that way. So visit smaulgld.com, look at the link. I have a lot of links below. Probably no one looks at them, but take a look at the links tonight below BitChute and below this YouTube. There's offers, there's ways to donate. You can buy your Smaulgld mugs that way. So check those out. I do appreciate all the support. And tomorrow is Saturday Night Silver with Smaulgld, and we're going to cover the history of junk silver. I've had a subscriber ask about the premiums on junk silver. I had forgotten. I wrote an article. He says he refers to it all the time. Back in 2015. Forgot I wrote it. And it is an interesting topic, and we'll talk about junk silver tomorrow night. Sunday we'll do Solid Gold Sunday with Smaulgld, and we'll try to take it from there. Unless anyone's got any more questions, we will head on out. Okay. Let's see. Joshua says, good program. He's signing up for the Smaulgld Mug this weekend. Oh, I appreciate that. David does pretty good work. Who's David? David who? All right. Fiona, one of the only legit analysts in the space, in my opinion. I don't know who that is. Thanks, Lewis, says Philip Quinn. Joshua, you're right. McIlvaney does a good job. Okay, I don't know who that is. Bullish. He shouted me out for the rhodium comment. Platinum to the moon. David McIlvaney. All right. Well, again, thanks everyone. Appreciate all the comments. And hope to see you back if you enjoyed the program. Make it a habit. And also go back and check out some of the other programs we've done. I did like 6 or 7 in the last 2 days, covering everything from Steve Mnuchin's 50 to 100 year bonds that he's talking about. I got into Mario Draghi's comments also, so check that out on what the ECB is doing. So there's a lot of news you can catch up with. Try to do more analysis than a news, because a lot of channels go on and they read what they see on the screen. You can do that yourself, or maybe you can't. Maybe you're driving, you need somebody to read it for you. But someone says he ain't no Camersano. That's me. Who's no Camersano? David McIlvaney? Of course not. He's got an Irish name. I got an Italian name. All right, Steve Mnuchin. It's all stagecraft. Good night, everyone. Appreciate the support. We'll say stop streaming. Bernie, what do you think?
Well, this Lewis guy, he wants to be part of the 1%. And what he doesn't understand that when everything is free, it won't matter how much money he has, because we're going to take it from him, and then we're going to make sure everybody has free health care. They're going to have everything for free. They're going to go to college for free, and then those stupid silver coins that he sells, they're going to be free too. So you have a good night, and stop trying to be part of the 1%.